The silence in Federal Courtroom 3B was so total it felt like a physical weight. Adrian Miller sat at the defense table, his expensive Tom Ford suit hanging on him like a shroud. For 6 long weeks, he had watched his life, his reputation, and his entire future disintegrate under the cold, fluorescent lights. And for 6 long weeks, his wife, Elysia, had sat in the front row, directly behind him, her face a perfect porcelain mask. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't cried. She hadn't even flinched. But all that was about to change. Because Judge Evelyn Reed, a woman known for her razor-sharp perception, just looked over her spectacles, not at Adrian, but at the silent wife, and asked the one question that would detonate the entire room. The hum of the HVAC system in Courtroom 3B was the only sound, a low artificial drone that drilled into Adrian Miller's skull. It had been his constant companion for 34 days. He sat as he always did, with his spine perfectly straight, a posture his mother had drilled into him, one that was meant to convey confidence and integrity. Now it just felt like a brittle shell. To his left sat his lawyer, Michael Hayes, a man whose £1,200 an hour fee was being paid by a rapidly dwindling legal fund. Hayes was shuffling papers, but Adrian knew it was just for show. The prosecution had rested. The defense had rested. All that was left were the closing arguments and the slow, agonizing walk to the guillotine. Adrian's gaze drifted, as it always did, to the first row of the gallery. There sat Elysia. She was wearing a conservative navy blue dress from Acris one he had bought her for a benefit gala 2 years ago. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe chignon, and her hands were clasped in her lap, motionless. She looked less like a supportive spouse and more like a beautifully preserved archaeological find. Her stillness was absolute. The media had dubbed her the porcelain doll. She hadn't missed a single day. She arrived in their black Mercedes S-Class, walked past the cameras without a word, sat in that same spot, and watched. She never looked at the prosecution. She rarely even looked at the jury. She just watched Adrian. The charge was wire fraud, securities fraud, and embezzlement. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, a bulldog named Larson, had painted a picture of a man consumed by greed. A man who, as the CFO of Stratford Capital, had systematically siphoned $14.7 million from partner accounts and investor funds into a labyrinth of offshore shells. The evidence was overwhelming. The spreadsheets, the wire transfers, the digital signatures, they all pointed to one man, Adrian Miller. What Larson didn't know, what the jury didn't know, what no one in this room knew, was that Adrian hadn't spent a single dollar of it on himself. He'd had a good life, a great life. He'd earned his MBA from Wharton. Met Elysia, a beautiful, fragile art history major from a good family, and built a life with her in a sprawling Tudor home in Greenwich, Connecticut. He had his golf membership at the Appowamis Club. She had her charity boards. They had 2 children, Ben, now a sophomore at Dartmouth, and Chloe, a senior in high school. They were by all accounts the American dream, until that Tuesday in October. The memory was so clear it made Adrian's stomach clench. He had come home early, smelling the crisp autumn air, ready to surprise Elysia. He found her in his study, not admiring the foliage, but hunched over his computer. Her face stained with tears, her hands shaking so violently she could barely type. That was the day the silence began. Now in the courtroom, Adrian pulled his gaze away from her. The silence between them had started in that study, and had expanded, filling their home, their car, and now this courtroom. It was a toxic, suffocating presence. It was the only thing holding their entire, horrifying secret together. Judge Evelyn Reed, a woman in her late 60s with a reputation for suffering no fools, was adjusting her microphone. "Mr. Larson, Mr. Hayes, I have reviewed the final motions," she said, her voice cutting through the stale air. "We will proceed with closing arguments tomorrow at 9 a.m. A ripple of movement, lawyers gathering briefcases, the jury being led out. It was over for the day. Adrian stood, and as he always did, he turned to Alicia. He was supposed to look at her, to give a small, brave smile. "See, I'm strong. We're strong." It was part of the performance. But today, he couldn't. He looked at her, and for the first time he didn't see his wife. He saw a stranger, a co-conspirator, the author of his ruin. She met his gaze. Her blue eyes were wide, empty, and terrified. As the court officer approached to lead him to the holding area, he hadn't made bail. Adrian felt a surge of cold, bitter rage. It wasn't the jury or the judge or Larson who was annihilating him. It was the silent woman in the navy blue dress. The why was a man named Justin Vance. He was a ghost from a life Alicia had lived long before she was Mrs. Adrian Miller. In her junior year at Brown, before she'd transferred to be closer to her family, Alicia had been a different person, a girl experimenting with art, with freedom, and with a charismatic, dangerous photography major named Justin. Their relationship was a brief, combustible mess, fueled by cheap wine and artistic pretension. It ended badly, as those things often do. Alicia moved on, buried that version of herself, and met Adrian, a man who was the polar opposite of Justin. Adrian was safety. He was stability. He was the future. For 22 years, Justin Vance was a forgotten footnote. Until he wasn't. It started with an email to Alicia's private account. Subject: Remember Provence. She'd almost deleted it as spam. But she opened it. It was a photo. Her 20 years younger, on the back of a motorcycle laughing. But there was another photo attached. This one was not so innocent. It was her at a party with a small baggie and a rolled-up bill. It was a phase, a stupid mistake, a single night. But in the photo she looked like the face of privileged dissipation. The email was simple. Alicia, my love, you've aged like a fine wine. I, on the other hand, have not. I find myself in a bit of a financial jam. I'm thinking $50,000 would solve it. For old time's sake. J. Alicia felt the blood drain from her face. It was blackmail, plain and simple. The photo itself was embarrassing but manageable. She was about to delete it, to tell him to go to hell. Then the second email arrived. Subject: O. And one more thing. This photo was different. It was dark, grainy, and taken from a distance. It was a car, a dark blue Audi, parked on a street she hadn't thought about in 2 decades. The Audi had a shattered headlight. In the foreground, just visible, was the twisted metal of a bicycle. Alicia stopped breathing. It wasn't a party. It wasn't drugs. It was the other secret, the real one. The one she and Justin had buried on a rainy night in Rhode Island. A cyclist, a dark road. They'd been drinking. They'd hit something. Justin was driving. Or was he? It was blurry. He'd grabbed her, pulled her from the car, and they'd run. They can't trace it, he'd whispered, his voice frantic. Nobody saw us. We were never here. They'd read the paper the next day. A man, a local professor, was in a coma. He died a week later. The case was never solved. Justin's new email was short. He was driving. But your fingerprints were all over the passenger side, the door handle, the dash. And you ran. That's called fleeing the scene of a crime, resulting in death. I wonder what the statute of limitations is on that. Oh, wait. There isn't one for murder. 100 tons, 1,000. Or, I send this, and the original police report I found, to your husband, and maybe the DA. Elysia stared at the screen, the room spinning. This was not a $100,000 problem. This was a ruin your entire life problem. The philanthropist, the mother, the wife of a prominent CFO. She couldn't tell Adrian. She couldn't. He was a man of pristine integrity. He followed the rules. He paid his taxes to the penny. This secret would shatter his image of her. It would destroy their family. So she paid. She liquidated a small stock fund her grandmother had left her. The $100,000 vanished from her account. A month later, Justin wrote again. He was starting a new business venture. He needed $250,000. Elysia was out of personal funds. She was trapped. She looked at her life, the Greenwich home, the benefit dinners, her son at Dartmouth, her daughter applying to Yale. It was all a beautiful, fragile glass sculpture. And Justin was a man with a hammer. She started small. She used the foundation's credit card just for a small donation that she routed to an account Justin provided. She'd pay it back. She just needed time. But Justin was relentless. The demands grew. $250,000 became $500,000. He wanted a stake in her perfect life. Elysia, desperate and financially illiterate in the ways of high-level crime, grew clumsy. She needed to cover the hole at the charity. She started looking at Adrian's computer. He managed so many accounts. Billions of dollars. A small transfer from an acquisitions fund. Who would notice she knew his passwords? He trusted her. "We have no secrets, Elle," he used to say. She made the first transfer. $300,000. She felt sick, but also a strange, powerful rush. She did it. She had fixed it. But the hole she'd plugged at the charity was now a new, much more dangerous hole at Stratford Capital. And Justin was still emailing. It was on that Tuesday in October when she was trying to execute a transfer for $1.5 million that Adrian walked into the study. He didn't yell. He didn't shout. He just stood there. "Elle," he said, his voice quiet. "What are you doing on the international transfer portal?" She turned her face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. The screen behind her glowed with the details of her crime. To J. Vance Holdings, Cayman Islands. The silence in the study was deafening. "Adrian," she whispered. And then the dam broke. The confession was a flood. The emails, the photos, the party, the $100,000. But she left one part out. The most important part. She never told him about the cyclist. She never told him about the hit and run. She told him Justin was blackmailing her over the drug photos from college. Adrian listened, his face growing pale. He was looking at his wife of 22 years and seeing a stranger who had just set their entire world on fire. Adrian Miller was a fixer. All his life he had fixed things. He'd fixed his father's failing hardware store's books at 16. He'd fixed a disastrous merger in his first job at Deloitte. He fixed his son's crooked teeth with the best orthodontist and his daughter's C+ in calculus with the best tutor. He looked at his weeping wife, a woman he had sworn to protect, and he saw a problem that needed to be fixed. "He's blackmailing you," Adrian said, his voice flat. He was already in CFO mode, analyzing risk, mitigating damage. "Yes," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Adrian. I paid him. I used the money from the foundation, and then I was just trying to pay it back." Adrian's eyes went to the screen. J. Vance Holdings. He'd already made the transfer. 1.5 million, gone. He did the math in his head. The $100,000, the $250,000, the charity money. And now this. It was over $2 million. "We go to the police," Adrian said, reaching for the phone. "This is blackmail. It's extortion. He's the criminal, not you." "No!" Alicia lunged, grabbing his arm. Her eyes were wild. We can't. Why not?" "He's a criminal. Because, she stammered, thinking fast. "The photos. The drug photos. It's not just me. There were other people, Adrian. Powerful people. Their children. It will be a scandal. It will ruin Chloe's application to Yale. It will get Ben kicked out of Dartmouth. Think of the families, Adrian." The press. She was lying. But she was desperate. Adrian paused. He looked at the photo of his children on his desk. Chloe smiling, holding her lacrosse stick. Ben his arm around his mother. A scandal. The press. His wife the drug-addled partier. His children shamed. He was a fixer. "Okay," he said, his voice low. "Okay." "No police?" "Not yet." He sat down at his desk. His desk. The scene of the crime. He looked at the transfer. By $5 million. It was already flagged by the system. He'd have to approve it on the back end. "Who is this man, Justin Vance?" he asked. "No one," she said. "A mistake from college. He's a bad person." "He's a smart one," Adrian muttered, looking at the Cayman Islands account. "This is a professional setup." He looked at the gaping hole in the company's acquisitions fund. $1.5 million wasn't just a rounding error. It was a felony. I have to cover this," he said, more to himself than to her. "I can move money from the reserve ledger. It will look like a late payment on the Singapore deal. I can fix this." He turned to Alicia. His face was cold, his eyes hard. The warmth she had known for 2 decades was gone, replaced by the calculating chill of the CFO. "You will never contact this man again," he ordered. "You will delete your email account. You will change your phone number. You are done. I will handle Justin Vance. And you will never, ever touch my computer again." Alicia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Adrian. I love you so much. You saved me." Adrian didn't reply. He just stared at the screen, his mind already spinning a web of false ledgers, backdated reports, and phantom accounts. He was a fixer. He would fix this. What he didn't realize was that he wasn't fixing the problem. He was becoming it. For the next 6 months, Adrian lived a double life. By day, he was the model CFO. By night, he was a high-stakes criminal desperately trying to stay 1 step ahead. He had to cover the first $1.5 million. But to do that, he had to borrow from another fund, and then another. Justin Vance, sensing a new, more formidable opponent, went quiet. He'd gotten his money. But Adrian was in a hole he couldn't climb out of. He was playing a three-dimensional chess game with the company's and his partner's money. His oldest friend and partner, David Rosenkrantz, was the one who found it. David was the CEO, the big picture guy. Adrian was the details man. They'd built Stratford Capital from nothing. David walked into his office one evening holding a single printout. He looked wounded. "Adrian," David said, his voice heavy. "I don't understand this transfer. $4.2 million to a holding company I've never heard of. It looks like you signed off on it." Adrian's blood ran cold. He had gotten sloppy. He was tired. "It's a new acquisition, David. Very sensitive. I was handling it personally." David looked at him. They had been friends for 30 years. They'd been best men at each other's weddings. "A sensitive deal," David said. "Or a disappearing deal, Adrian. I ran the account number. It's a shell corp. The money, it's gone." Adrian had no answer. He couldn't lie to David. Not to his face. "David, it's complicated." "Complicated?" David's voice rose. "It's theft, Adrian. That's our investors' money. That's my money. That's my children's college fund. What have you done?" Adrian looked at his friend, his face ashen. He had a choice. He could tell David the truth. About Elysia. About the blackmail. They could go to the police. It would be a scandal, but David would understand. But he looked at David's betrayed face. And he thought of Elysia. He thought of his fix. I made some bad investments," Adrian stammered. "I tried to cover them. It spiraled. I can get it back." David stared at him. His eyes filled with a dawning, soul-crushing horror. He wasn't seeing a friend. He was seeing a common criminal. You stole from us," David whispered. "After everything. You stole from me." "David, please." David shook his head, backing away. "Get a lawyer, Adrian. Get a very, very good lawyer." David walked out of the office. The next call Adrian received was from the U.S. Attorney's office. The investigation was swift and brutal. The moment the feds had the thread, the entire tapestry of Adrian's life unraveled. The $14.7 million was the final number, the sum total of his 6-month shell game. He had moved money so many times, creating such a complex web to cover the initial $2 million, that he had inadvertently implicated himself in a massive multi-layered fraud. To the investigators, it was a classic case of executive greed, a CFO with a god complex who thought he was smarter than everyone else. They looked for the motive. They found none. No mistress, no drug habit, no secret yacht. The money was simply gone, vanished into the digital ether of the Cayman Islands. The night before his arrest, Adrian sat Elysia down in their cavernous, silent living room. "They're coming for me tomorrow," he said. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at a painting she'd bought, a swirling, abstract mess of blues and greys. "What?" she whispered, her hand flying to her throat. "David went to the feds. They found everything, or what they think is everything." "Adrian, what? What does this mean?" He finally turned to her. His eyes were dead. "It means I'm going to be arrested. It means I'm going to be charged. It means I am in all likelihood going to prison." Elysia began to cry the high, thin wail that had become the soundtrack to their lives. No. No, you can't. You have to tell them. Tell them about Justin. Tell them it was for me. Adrian stood up, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Tell them what, Elysia? That my wife was being blackmailed over some college photos, and that instead of calling the police like a sane person, I decided to embezzle nearly $15 million. That's not a defense. That's a motive. The prosecution would love that. Ladies and gentlemen, he didn't do it for greed. He did it for his wife. He did it to protect her from a secret so dark he was willing to steal from his own partners. He was pacing now, his hands slicing the air. No, that is not the story. Then what is? She pleaded. He stopped his back to her. The story is that I am a gambling addict. A failed one. I made high-risk trades with company funds. I lost. I tried to cover it. I lost more. I am a bad man, a disgrace and a thief. That is the story. It's simple. It's clean. They'll believe it. But it's a lie. He spun around his face, a mask of cold fury. A lie. You want to talk about lies, Elysia? We are living in a house built on them. You started this with your ghost. This is how I fix it. This is the last fix. He walked over to her, kneeling so he was eye level. His voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. You will say nothing. You will never, ever speak of Justin Vance. You will never speak of the blackmail. You will sit in that courtroom, you will look supportive, and you will be silent. You will be the grieving, clueless wife. That is your part. That is how you pay me back. You will let me take this. You will let me be the villain. Because if you don't, if you say one word, you will not only send me to prison, you will send yourself. He was right. She was an accomplice. Her clumsy transfers were the origin of the crime. And Adrian, she whispered, a new cold fear gripping her. The money? The 14.7 million. Where is it? It's gone, he said. The $2 million went to Justin. The other $12 million, I lost it. I tried to invest it to win it all back in one go. High-risk crypto offshore markets. I was chasing the loss. It's all gone. There's nothing to give back. This, too, was a lie. He hadn't lost it. He had hidden it. After he'd covered the initial blackmail, he'd seen the writing on the wall. He knew he was going down. So he'd kept going. He'd taken the rest. He'd moved it, cleaned it, and tucked it away in an account under a name that didn't exist, an account only he knew about. It wasn't for him. It was for her. For Ben. For Chloe. It was his final terrible fix. He would go to prison, but they would be taken care of. The house was in her name. The feds couldn't take it. This $12 million was their future. His payment for his silence. So Adrian created his narrative. He was a gambling addict. And Elysia began her role, the silent porcelain wife. The trial was a blur of calculated humiliation. U.S. Attorney Larson was a master of narrative. He wasn't just prosecuting a man. He was telling a story. It was a story of arrogance, of a Greenwich millionaire who played God with other people's money. Look at him, Larson boomed in his opening statement, pointing a thick finger at Adrian. He sits there in his Tom Ford suit, a suit likely paid for with stolen money. He thought he was untouchable. He thought the rules didn't apply to Adrian Miller. Adrian sat spine straight, his face a mask of polite, detached interest. Michael Hayes, his lawyer, played their hand perfectly. He didn't contest the transfers. The evidence was circumstantial, but unfortunate. His defense was built on motive. My client is not a monster. Hayes argued, his voice full of feigned sincerity. He is a man with a sickness called compulsive gambling. He didn't do this out of greed. He did this out of desperation. He lost, and he chased his losses. He is here to take responsibility for that. It was a brilliant strategy. It took the narrative of a cold, calculating sociopath and turned it into a tragic human interest story. They were pleading for a lesser sentence for understanding. The jury ate it up. They looked at Adrian with a new, softer gaze. They saw his clueless wife sitting behind him, a portrait of quiet dignity. What a tragedy. David Rosenkrantz was the prosecution's star witness. This was the part Adrian dreaded. David took the stand, his face etched with sadness. "Did you trust the defendant, Mr. Rosenkrantz?" Larson asked. "With my life," David said, his voice thick. "He was my best friend. He's the godfather to my daughter. And what did he do with that trust? He broke it. He stole from us. He stole from me." David looked at Adrian, his eyes pleading. "I still don't understand why. He had everything." Adrian had to look away. The lie was a physical thing, a rock in his stomach. He was letting his best friend believe he was a common thief, a degenerate gambler. It was part of the penance. But the real torture was Alicia. Every morning they rode to the courthouse in the back of the Mercedes, a court-appointed driver separating them. They said nothing. Every evening they returned to the Greenwich house. The house was cold. The children were gone. Ben refused to come home from Dartmouth, and Chloe was staying with an aunt to focus on her exams. The staff had been let go. They ate dinner in silence in the cavernous dining room. Leftovers from a local gourmet shop served on their 500 a plate Bernardeau china. One night, Alicia finally spoke. "How much longer, Adrian?" she whispered, her voice rusty from disuse. "Closings are tomorrow. Then the jury. A few days. And then I'll be sentenced." He put his fork down. "The plea deal Hayes is working on with the gambling story. Maybe 10 years. With good behavior, I'll be out in 7. 7 years. She said it like a death sentence. "It's the best I can do, Elle," he said, his voice hard. "It's the price. For the photos. For Justin. For the mess." She flinched. He knew she hadn't told him the full truth about the blackmail. He could feel it. The lie about the drug photos was too thin. The amount of money was too high. He'd done his research. Justin Vance had no powerful friends. He was a small-time grifter. But Adrian didn't press. He didn't want to know. Knowing would mean he had to fix that, too. When you get out," she stammered, we can go away. With the money." Adrian's head snapped up. "What money? The money you saved for us." He stared at her. "There is no money, Alicia. I told you. I lost it all. The gambling story. It's not all a lie. I lost it." This was a new lie, a new layer. He couldn't let her know about the $12 million. If she knew, she might spend it. She might be traced. The feds would be watching her accounts for years. She had to believe they were as ruined as he was. The $12 million was a seed for a new life, but it had to stay buried dormant until the world forgot about them. Elysia's face crumpled. But how will we live the house? The house is in your name. Sell it. Sell the art. Sell the china. You'll be fine. You'll just have to live like normal people. The look of pure, unadulterated horror on his wife's face was almost comical. The woman who had started a $15 million fire was terrified at the prospect of flying commercial. Now, Adrian said, standing, I'm going to bed. I have a big day tomorrow. I have to go to court and be a degenerate gambler. He left her in the dining room, a silent queen, in a cold, empty castle. The final day of testimony was Adrian's. He walked to the stand, his steps measured. He wore his sincere suit, a simple dark charcoal, not the flashy Tom Ford. He'd been prepped for this by Hayes 40 hours. Mr. Miller. Hayes began, his voice dripping with compassion. Please tell the jury in your own words. What happened? Adrian took a deep breath. He looked at the jury, his eyes full of practiced regret. I have a sickness, he began. His voice was steady, but he'd been told to let it crack just a little. It started small. Online poker. A few sports bets. But I was good at my job. I was good with numbers. I thought I could beat the system. He launched into the narrative. The web of lies. He'd made a bad trade on the Nikkei. He'd borrowed from a partner fund to cover it. Then he'd had to borrow more. He'd discovered high-risk crypto. He was so close to winning it all back. I never meant to hurt anyone, he said, and this was the one true thing. David, my partners, they were my family. But the need, it was bigger than me. I couldn't stop. He put his head in his hands. It was a good performance. He could feel the jury's sympathy. They saw a fallen man, not a predator. Then it was Larson's turn. The prosecutor stalked up to the stand. He saw the gambling addict performance and clearly didn't buy a word of it. A sickness, Mr. Miller. That's what you're calling it. Yes, sir. It's a recognized... I'm not interested in your WebMD diagnosis, Larson snapped. You're at a numbers man. A whiz, they called you. So let's talk numbers. You're telling this jury that you, a Wharton-educated CFO, managed to lose $14.7 million with no trace. It was high risk, very volatile. Oh, I'll bet it was volatile. Larson grinned a shark's grin. So volatile, in fact, that our forensic accountants, the best in the world, can't find a single corresponding loss. They can't find a crypto wallet. They can't find an offshore trading account. The money went into your shell companies, and then it vanished. Adrian felt a prickle of sweat. I don't know the specifics. I was panicking. You panicked your way into a $1.5 million transfer to a J. Vance Holdings in the Cayman Islands. Who is J. Vance, Mr. Miller, your bookie? Adrian's blood froze. They'd found Justin. I don't recall. Adrian said the first cardinal sin of testimony. Larson pounced. You don't recall a $1.5 million transfer. A man on trial for his life. He slammed a file on the podium. We ran J. Vance Holdings. It's a ghost. An account opened and closed in 48 hours. The money was wired out instantly to another account in Cyprus, and from there, gone. Larson leaned in. Is J. Vance. The name of your dealer, Mr. Miller. Is that what this is about? Not gambling, but drugs. A high-class habit. No, it's not. Or maybe, Larson said, his voice dropping. It wasn't for you at all. The prosecutor turned his eyes, landing for the first time on the front row, on Elysia. Your wife, Mr. Miller, she's been here every day, very supportive. But her personal accounts, they're pristine. In fact, her personal wealth has actually grown in the last year. Stocks she just happened to sell right before the market dipped. A trust that just happened to mature. Leave her out of this, Adrian snapped, rising slightly from his chair. Sit down, Mr. Miller, the judge ordered. You're a fixer, aren't you, Mr. Miller? Larson said, using the word Adrian himself had used. That's your reputation. You fix things. What if you were fixing a problem for her? What if she has the habit? What if she's the gambler? And you're just the loyal, foolish husband, taking the fall. Adrian was shaking. Larson was so close, yet so far. He was painting Elysia as a co-conspirator, a Lady Macbeth. It was the exact opposite of the narrative Adrian had built. My wife, Adrian said, his voice iron, knows nothing about my business. She is a good woman. She is a victim in all of this, a victim of my sickness. She looks like a victim to you, Larson scoffed. She looks pretty comfortable. He turned to the jury. This man is not a gambler. He is a liar. He's lying to you now just as he lied to his partners, and he's doing it to protect the money. The money that I believe is waiting for him. Or perhaps for her. Larson turned. No further questions, Your Honor. Adrian walked back to his table, his legs shaking. Hayes wouldn't look at him. The gambling narrative was in shreds. Larson had just painted him as a liar and his wife as a potential criminal mastermind. The silence in the room was back heavier than before. Judge Evelyn Reed looked over the courtroom. She was a grandmother of 6, and she had seen more liars pass through her court than she could count. She had presided over mob bosses, serial killers, and white-collar crooks, and she knew with the certainty of a lifetime on the bench that everyone in this room was lying about something. Adrian Miller was lying. His gambling story was paper-thin. Michael Hayes was lying, pushing a defense he clearly didn't believe. Larson was a prosecutor. He was paid to create a narrative, and his Lady Macbeth story was a good one, but it felt wrong. And then there was the wife, Elysia Miller. Judge Reed had watched her. For 6 weeks, the woman's stillness was unnatural. It wasn't the dignified grief of a loyal wife. It was the frozen, brittle stillness of terror. The two narratives didn't add up. The degenerate gambler, the criminal mastermind wife. Neither fit the picture. Mr. Hayes, Judge Reed said, her voice quiet. Do you have a redirect? No, Your Honor. The defense rests. Very well. Judge Reed took off her glasses, polishing them. The room was utterly silent. This was it. The end. Mr. Miller, the judge said, her voice conversational. You have testified for 2 days. Your wife has sat behind you, showing a level of support. That is remarkable. Adrian nodded, tense. She is a good wife, Your Honor. I'm sure, Judge Reed said. I have no more questions for you. You may step down. Adrian began to stand, a wave of relief washing over him. It was over. He'd survived Larson. But I find myself, the judge continued, with one question, a simple one, not for you, for your wife. The entire courtroom froze. Adrian froze halfway out of his chair. Hayes shot to his feet. Your Honor, Hayes protested, Mrs. Miller is not on trial. She is not on the witness list. You cannot compel. I am not compelling Mr. Hayes, Judge Reed said, her voice cutting like steel. I am not asking her to testify. She is not under oath. I am, as an old woman, simply curious. She leaned forward, her gaze locking on the front row, on Alicia. Mrs. Miller. Alicia looked up, her blue eyes wide, a deer in the headlights of a freight train. Mrs. Miller, this has been a painful 6 weeks. I see the strain on you. I see the strain on your husband. The judge paused, letting the silence stretch. Your husband has lost his business, his reputation, his friends, and is facing a significant prison sentence, all for what he calls bad investments. All while, as Mr. Larson pointed out, your own personal assets, your home, your trust fund, are secure. Alicia's hands, which had been perfectly still for 6 weeks, began to tremble in her lap. It is a curious arrangement, the judge mused. He takes the fall. You keep the house. It's a very practical division of assets. Your Honor. Hayes was apoplectic. This is prejudicial. This is... Sit down, Mr. Hayes, or I will have you held in contempt. Hayes sat. Judge Reed's eyes never left Alicia's. Her voice was soft, almost kind, and that made it all the more brutal. My question is this, Mrs. Miller. It's a simple one. After all this, after all his lies, all his sickness, all the ruin he has brought upon your family, do you still sleep in the same bed? The question hung in the air, a grenade with the pin pulled. It was a metaphorical question, a personal one, a brilliant, devastating, and entirely inappropriate one. Are you still a team? Are you still intimate? Or is this all a cold, hard business transaction? Larson was smiling. He had his answer. A no would mean she was disgusted by him, that the marriage was a sham confirming his cold mastermind theory. A yes would be a lie so unbelievable it would make her look like a fool or a co-conspirator. Alicia's face, the perfect porcelain mask, finally cracked. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. A single tear, a perfect cinematic tear, rolled down her cheek. She wasn't looking at the judge. She was looking at Adrian. And in her eyes, he didn't see terror. He didn't see guilt. He saw shame. A bottomless, profound shame. She couldn't answer. She couldn't say yes and lie. And she couldn't say no and confirm Larson's theory. But Adrian knew the answer. They hadn't slept in the same bed in 6 months. They hadn't touched since the day he'd found her at his computer. He watched his wife, the woman he had sacrificed his entire life to protect, be humiliated in a federal courtroom. The judge's question had framed her not as the victim he saw, but as a cold, calculating monster who was sleeping soundly in her $10,000 bed while he rotted. Larson thought he was protecting her. The judge thought he was a fool and she was the villain. And in that moment, the entire elaborate, selfless, and monumentally stupid fix collapsed. He was protecting her from a $100,000 blackmail. But he was letting the world believe she was a $15 million sociopath. He had saved her from Justin only to throw her to the wolves. He looked at Alicia. Her single tear, her trembling lip. He could not. He would not. Stop! The word was a roar. It ripped out of Adrian's chest a raw, primal sound that echoed off the marble walls. He slammed his hands on the defense table, the sound cracking like a gunshot. Stop it! All of you, just stop! He was on his feet. The U.S. Marshals moved toward him. Mr. Miller, sit down, the judge commanded. No, Adrian yelled, his voice breaking. You want the truth. You want to know what this is about. It's not about gambling. It's not about greed. He turned his eyes wild and pointed, not at Elysia, but at the prosecutor. You, he seethed at Larson, you think you're so smart. You think you've got it all figured out. Then he turned to the judge. And you? You ask her if she sleeps in my bed. You ask her that. You have no idea. You have no idea what she's been through. Hayes was trying to pull him down. Adrian, for God's sake, stop. This is a mistrial. This is... Get your hands off me, Michael. Adrian shoved him away. He stalked toward the center of the courtroom, toward the witness stand. A man broken. He spun to face the gallery, to face Elysia. His whole body was shaking. The dam of 6 months of silence, of lies, of soul-crushing sacrifice had just burst. Tell them, Elle, he whispered, his voice cracking. Elysia was sobbing now, full-body gasping sobs. Tell them, he roared. Tell them the truth. I can't do this anymore. I can't protect you. He turned to the stunned, silent courtroom. It wasn't me, he said, the words tumbling out. I didn't steal it. She did. She stole it. She stole it all. Hayes collapsed into his chair, his face white. Oh my God. She was being blackmailed. Adrian shouted, tears streaming down his face now. A man named Justin Vance. He had pictures. He was destroying her. She took the money, and I am a fixer. He laughed a high, hysterical laugh. I'm the fixer. I saw what she did, and I tried to fix it. I tried to cover it. I moved the money. I created the shells. He looked at the jury, at the judge, at his best friend, David, who was standing in the back, his face a mask of pure shock. He was blackmailing her. Adrian said, his voice dropping to a child's whisper. She was scared. I was just trying to protect her. I was trying to protect my wife. He sank to his knees right there in the middle of the courtroom. The $4,000 suit, the Wharton MBA, the Greenwich mansion. It all dissolved. He was just a man. A broken, terrified man. He looked at Elysia. I'm sorry, Elle. I'm so sorry. I failed. I couldn't fix it. And with that, Adrian Miller, the fixer, the man of perfect rigid control, put his face in his hands and broke down his sobs, echoing in the profound, absolute silence of the courtroom. The courtroom erupted. Judge Reed's gavel cracked. Order. Order in the court. Marshals secure the defendant. Mr. Hayes approach the bench. Mr. Larson. We are in recess. Adrian was gently, almost pitifully, lifted from the floor by the marshals. He offered no resistance. He was hollowed out. Elysia was frozen, her face a grotesque mask of tears and dawning horror. Her silence had been broken, and the world had caved in. This trial, Judge Reed announced, her voice shaking with fury, is declared a mistrial. The jury is dismissed. What followed was a legal explosion. Adrian's confession on the stand, or rather the floor, was inadmissible as testimony, but it was a nuclear bomb in the case. Elysia was taken into a conference room with a frantic Michael Hayes and moments later her own high-priced lawyer. And for the first time she told the whole truth, not the drug photos. "It was a hit and run," she whispered, her voice trembling. 22 years ago, a man died. Justin was there. He had proof. He was blackmailing me over a murder, not photos. The room went cold. This was no longer about white-collar crime. The full ugly story came out. The U.S. Attorney's Office, furious at the mistrial, but smelling a new, bigger case, pounced. They found Justin Vance in 2 days, living in a luxury condo in Miami, paid for by J. Vance Holdings. The $12 million that Adrian had lost, the feds found it. It was in a blockchain-secured trust under a name that meant nothing to them, but everything to Adrian Ben Chloe Holdings. Adrian Miller, the degenerate gambler, was gone. Adrian Miller, the master fraudster, was gone. What remained was Adrian Miller, the world's most catastrophic fixer. The new trial was a media circus. It was the state of Rhode Island versus Justin Vance and Elysia Miller. And it was the U.S. government versus Adrian Miller for obstruction, perjury, and conspiracy, and Justin Vance for extortion. It was a mess, but the final act was quiet. Justin Vance, faced with a mountain of evidence, took a plea: extortion and accessory to the hit and run. He was sentenced to 15 years. Elysia Miller. Her testimony against Justin and the clear evidence of decades-old coercion earned her a plea: accessory after the fact. 5 years probation, a $2 million fine, and 2,000 hours of community service. And Adrian. He stood before Judge Reed once more. The courtroom was empty, save for the lawyers David Rosenkrantz, and in the back, his children Ben and Chloe. Their faces pale. Elysia was not there. "Mr. Miller," Judge Reed said, "you are without a doubt one of the most brilliant and most foolish men to have ever stood in my courtroom. You committed a massive fraud. You lied to federal officers. You perjured yourself on the stand. You did everything in your power to obstruct this investigation. You are, by the letter of the law, a hardened criminal." Adrian said nothing. "But," the judge continued, "you did not do it for greed. You did it for a profoundly misguided sense of love. You have already lost your company, your reputation, your friends, and I suspect your marriage. You have also, I note, cooperated fully, and returned every single dollar of the $12 million you lost." She looked at David Rosenkrantz, who nodded. He had been repaid. "The U.S. Attorney's Office recommends 10 years, the judge said. "But I am not the U.S. Attorney. I am a judge, and I believe in justice, and justice in this case is not served by putting you in a cell." "Time served," Judge Reed said. 5 years of supervised probation, and a $5 million fine to be paid personally. You, Mr. Miller, are a fixer. I sentence you to go fix your own life, and you will do it as a free but broke man. We are adjourned." Adrian stood there, stunned. He walked out of the courtroom, not in handcuffs, but as a free man. His children rushed to him, hugging him, weeping. He looked past them. David was standing by the door. The two men looked at each other, a gulf of 30 years and $15 million between them. David gave a single, slow nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It was understanding. He turned and left. Adrian walked out onto the steps of the courthouse into the sunlight. He had nothing. No job, no money, no home. A black town car pulled up. The window rolled down. It was Elysia. She looked different. Her hair was down. She wore no makeup. She looked her age. And she looked strong. They looked at each other for a long, silent moment. The silence was different now. It wasn't heavy. It was just empty. Waiting. "The house is sold," she said, her voice clear. I gave most of the money to a victims fund for the cyclist's family. It's not enough. But it's a start." "Where will you go?" he asked. "I don't know. Chloe is taking a gap year. We were thinking maybe a small apartment in the city." She looked at him. "Where will you go, Adrian?" He had no answer. "Get in," she said. He hesitated. "Get in, Adrian," she said, not as a request, but as a statement. "We're not okay. And we might not ever be okay. But we are not done." Adrian Miller, the fixer, looked at his wife, the woman he had ruined and who had ruined him. He took a deep breath of the free, clean air, and for the first time in his life, with no idea what was next, he got in the car. The story of Adrian and Elysia Miller is a brutal reminder of what happens when secrets fester. Their perfect multi-million-dollar life was a lie built on a foundation of fear, and it took a single devastating question in a public courtroom to tear it all down. But in the rubble, they found something they'd lost: the truth. Was Adrian's sacrifice noble, or was it a foolish attempt to control the uncontrollable? Was Elysia's silence an act of guilt, or one of paralyzing fear? We want to know what you think. Let us know in the comments below. What would you have done if you were Adrian? What would you have done if you were Elysia? This story shows that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way. For more real-life dramas that will have you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who loves a good story, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.